Commander Sarah Chen had spent 3 months becoming someone else. The transformation wasn't just physical, though the neural graphs that changed her appearance had been painful enough. It was about becoming Trader Valshi, a minor Centaurian merchant with just enough of a criminal record to seem legitimate in the wrong circles. The Helios station loomed before her ship, a massive structure of dark metal and harsh angles. Official records listed it as a maximum security detention facility for the most dangerous criminals in the Orion Arm. But Sarah knew better. The 5 members of Earth's first diplomatic team to the Galactic Council were imprisoned somewhere in that labyrinth of cells and corridors, officially listed as disappeared after their shuttle experienced a catastrophic malfunction. Docking permission granted. Trader Valshi, the bored voice of traffic control, crackled through her comm. Proceed to Bay 17. Sarah guided her ship, a battered freighter carefully chosen to match her cover identity, into the designated bay. Her heart pounded, but her hands remained steady on the controls. 3 months of preparation came down to the next few hours. The docking procedure completed with a dull thud. Sarah performed a final check of her hidden equipment. Subdermal comm unit, neural disruptors disguised as jewelry, and a quantum key that could hack any standard security system. All present and undetectable to standard scans. The station's security officers were thorough but predictable in their inspection. Sarah played her role perfectly, the slightly nervous trader with contraband to hide. But nothing too serious. They found exactly what she wanted them to find. A few packages of restricted luxury goods, just enough to make her story credible. Payment of fine required before departure. The lead officer grunted, hitting her with a penalty that would bankrupt a real small-time trader. Sarah protested just enough to stay in character, then grudgingly transferred the credits. The officers moved on, satisfied they'd found her secret. They never suspected they'd just cleared exactly who she claimed not to be. The station's civilian section was a maze of narrow corridors and cramped shops, designed to process visitors quickly and encourage them to leave. Sarah moved with purpose, her implanted memories guiding her through the layout. The real Valshi had visited here twice before, memories extracted by Earth intelligence and implanted in Sarah's mind along with the physical disguise. She found her contact exactly where he was supposed to be, a small shop selling basic supplies to visitors. The Orcs behind the counter was impossible to read, their crystalline face refracting light in complex patterns. But Sarah knew the signs to look for. "I seek restoration," she said in careful Orc speak, the prescribed code phrase feeling alien on her modified vocal cords. The crystalline being's facets shifted slightly. "The path is complex," they responded, completing the recognition sequence. The next few minutes were a blur of careful choreography. Sarah browsing mundane items while the Orcs slipped her a data crystal containing guard rotations, security protocols, and most importantly, the location of the human prisoners. She left the shop with a bag of worthless supplies and priceless information. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. The maintenance access panel yielded to her stolen codes. Sarah slipped into the dark service tunnels that ran through the station's spine like capillaries. Her neural implants switched automatically to enhanced vision, painting the darkness in shades of green. She moved quickly but carefully, counting intersections and checking them against the memorized map. The prisoners were being held in Section 7, deep in the station's high-security zone. Getting there undetected would be challenging. Getting out with 5 additional people would be nearly impossible. But impossible wasn't in Sarah's vocabulary, not when Earth's future hung in the balance. The diplomatic team had been carrying crucial evidence when they disappeared. Proof that certain council races were violating treaty agreements, conducting illegal weapons research using human test subjects. If that evidence reached the council, it would shatter the careful political balance that kept humanity contained and controlled. A noise ahead froze Sarah in mid-step. Voices echoed through the tunnel maintenance workers on an unexpected patrol. She pressed herself into a shallow alcove, hardly daring to breathe as heavy boots approached. "Telling you, something's not right about the new protocols," one voice muttered. "Way too much security for standard prisoners." Above our pay grade, another voice responded. Just do the work and don't ask questions. The workers passed within arm's reach of Sarah's hiding spot. She remained motionless until their footsteps faded, then continued her careful progress through the tunnels. Finally, she reached the access point nearest to Section 7. Her neural implants connected wirelessly to the security network, feeding her real-time data about guard positions and camera coverage. She waited patiently as the patrol patterns aligned, then made her move. The high-security section was different, sterile white corridors, and much heavier security presence. Sarah moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there, her stolen credentials passing every checkpoint. The trick to infiltration, she learned, was not to sneak. It was to walk in like you owned the place. She found the cell block containing the diplomatic team exactly where the intel said it would be. 5 separate cells, spaced apart to prevent communication between prisoners. Sarah's heart clenched as she saw the condition of the people inside. 3 months of interrogation had left its mark. But they were alive. And now, they were getting out. The quantum key made short work of the cell controls. As the force fields dropped, 5 pairs of eyes turned to her in confusion, then hope as they recognized something familiar despite her altered appearance. Time to go home, Sarah said softly, already planning their next move. But she knew this was just the beginning. Getting in had been the easy part. Getting out would be a fight for survival. Sarah's carefully laid escape plan shattered the moment they reached the maintenance tunnels. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in pulsing red, and alarms shrieked through the station's communication system. "This isn't a response to us," she muttered, checking the security feeds through her neural implants. Guards were mobilizing, but they weren't heading toward Section 7. Something else had triggered the alert. Ambassador Richards, still unsteady from months of captivity, leaned against the wall. "They're moving the evidence," he wheezed. "They must have detected your infiltration and decided to relocate everything." "What evidence?" Sarah asked, dividing her attention between the security feeds and watching for patrols. "The biological research labs." Julia Chen, the team's science officer, spoke up. "They're not just developing weapons. They're testing them on human subjects. Prisoners officially listed as executed or transferred. We found proof, but they caught us before we could transmit it." Sarah's blood ran cold. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about systematic torture and murder of her species. Change of plans, she decided. We're hitting the labs before extraction. "That's suicide," Richards protested. "We barely made it this far." "Those are our people in there," Sarah countered. "And that evidence is the only thing that will prevent more humans from disappearing into places like this. We move now." Using her neural link to the station's systems, Sarah mapped a route to the research section. The alarms worked in their favor, creating confusion they could exploit. Most of the security forces were focused on securing the main detention areas, leaving the research labs relatively unprotected. They encountered their first real resistance at the lab entrance. 2 guards, more heavily armed than the standard security forces. Sarah moved before they could raise their weapons, her neural implants accelerating her reactions beyond normal human limits. The guards went down hard. "Take their weapons," she ordered, already working on the door controls. "Everyone who can handle a gun, grab one. This is about to get messy." The labs were a nightmare made real. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing the human subject in various stages of modification. Surgical robots hung from the ceiling like mechanical spiders, their tools stained with blood. "Download everything," Sarah commanded, her voice tight with fury. "Every file, every record, every piece of data that proves what they've done here." The diplomatic team moved with renewed purpose, their earlier exhaustion forgotten in the face of what they'd discovered. Julia accessed the main research terminal while the others stood guard. "This goes beyond weapons research," Julia reported, her face pale as she sifted through the files. "They're trying to decode human genetic adaptability, our ability to survive in environments that should kill us. They want to understand it, replicate it, and weaponize it. Sarah finished. How much longer? Data transfer at 60%. But Sarah, there's more. These aren't the only labs. This is happening at facilities across Council space. Thousands of missing humans. The station's emergency lighting shifted from red to purple, a new alert status. Sarah checked the security feeds and swore, they're initiating containment protocols, planning to vent this entire section into space. How long? 3 minutes to complete transfer. 5 minutes until atmospheric purge. Sarah made a quick decision. Ambassador, take the others and head for emergency pod bay 12. The station's distracted. You should have a clear path. Julia and I will finish here and follow. Commander, Richards began to protest. That's an order, Ambassador. The evidence has to reach Earth, and you're the one with the diplomatic credentials to present it. Go. As the others reluctantly departed, Sarah turned her attention to the stasis pods. Can we revive them? Julia shook her head. Not without proper medical support. The modifications are too extensive. But, she hesitated, we could end their suffering. Sarah nodded grimly. Do it. They deserve peace, at least. While Julia worked on shutting down the pods humanely, Sarah accessed the station's maintenance systems. If they were going to vent the lava anyway. Transfer complete, Julia announced. 2 minutes until purge. Perfect timing. Run. They sprinted for the emergency pod bay, alarms screaming in their wake. Behind them, Sarah's modifications to the containment protocols began their work. Instead of just venting the lab section, the entire station's atmospheric system was beginning to malfunction. They found the others at the pod bay, already preparing a pod for launch. Sarah did a quick head count, all present. As they piled into the cramped emergency vehicle, the station's automated warnings reached a fever pitch. The pod launched just as the chain reaction reached critical mass. Behind them, Helios Station began to tear itself apart, decades of carefully hidden atrocities exposed to the cold light of space. We have the evidence, Richards said quietly, but they'll try to stop us from reaching Earth. The Council races involved in this. They'll do anything to keep it quiet. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile as she piloted the pod toward the prearranged extraction coordinates. Let them try. Humanity's been quiet too long. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you push us too far. As if in answer to her words, the pod sensors detected multiple ships emerging from FTL. The station's distress call had been answered. But by whom? Incoming transmission, Julia reported. It's the Arcturian fleet. They're offering assistance and asylum. Sarah's smile widened. The Arcturians, one of the few council races that had consistently advocated for human rights. Accept the offer. But make sure they understand. This evidence goes public. No negotiations, no compromises. They agree, Julia said, surprise evident in her voice. They're saying, they've been gathering their own evidence of these operations. They want to help us expose everything. As the pod approached the Arcturian ships, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax slightly. Phase 1 was complete, but the real fight was just beginning. Humanity had been treated as a minor nuisance by the Council races, useful for experimentation, but otherwise ignorable. Time to show them how wrong they were. The Arcturian flagship's command center hummed with activity as data from the Helios station streamed across massive holographic displays. Sarah stood with Ambassador Richards and the Arcturian High Commander Vextra, watching as decades of carefully hidden atrocities came to light. 17 facilities. Vextra's translator rendered their harmonic speech into flat English, all conducting similar experiments, all violating not just Council law, but every principle of sentient rights. How many humans? Sarah asked, dreading the answer. Confirmed cases, over 3,000. But the missing persons databases suggest the true number could be 10 times that. Sarah's neural implants processed the data faster than organic eyes could follow. Research logs, transport manifests, genetic sequences, each file adding to a mountain of evidence that could no longer be ignored. The Council's emergency session begins in 6 hours, Richards said. We'll present everything. They'll try to bury it, Sarah countered. Unless what, Commander? Vextra's crystalline features shifted, and what Sarah had learned was their expression of curiosity. Unless we make it impossible to ignore. Those other facilities, they're still operational, still holding prisoners. Understanding rippled through Vextra's crystalline form. You propose a rescue operation. Simultaneous strikes on all facilities. The Arcturian fleet can't do it alone, Richards warned. Even with the evidence, direct military action against Council facilities would be seen as an act of war. We don't need a fleet. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. We need a revolution. How many non-human prisoners are in those facilities? Julia, who had been analyzing the data, spoke up. Thousands, mostly species from non-Council worlds. Test subjects for comparing results against human baselines. Contact them all, Sarah commanded. Every resistance group, every underground movement fighting Council oppression. Show them the evidence. Offer them a chance at justice. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of encrypted transmissions and hurried planning. The response exceeded even Sarah's expectations. Dozens of species, hundreds of organizations, all eager to strike back at their oppressors. When the Council emergency session began, Sarah watched from the Arcturian ship as Ambassador Richards presented their evidence. The Council chambers erupted into chaos as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Then, precisely on schedule, the revolution began. 17 research facilities across Council space came under simultaneous attack, not from warships or military forces, but from a coalition of the oppressed. Transport workers who smuggled weapons past security, maintenance crews who disabled defensive systems, medical staff who freed test subjects. Sarah coordinated it all through her neural implants, the quantum encryption protocols ensuring secure communication between disparate resistance cells. The Council's security forces found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't easily identify or contain. Multiple facilities breached, Julia reported, monitoring the incoming data streams. Prisoners being evacuated. Research data secured. Casualties, Sarah demanded. Minimal. Most security forces are surrendering once they realize what they've been guarding. The ones who resist. Julia's voice hardened. They're learning why it's a bad idea to corner desperate people. In the Council chambers, the evidence continued to mount, not just of human experimentation, but of systematic oppression across dozens of worlds. Each freed facility added to the database. Each rescued prisoner provided testimony that could not be denied. Council leadership is attempting to shift blame to rogue elements, Vextra reported, claiming no knowledge of these operations. Let them, Sarah said grimly. The truth is already spreading across every communication channel in Council space. Their own people are demanding answers. The revolution Sarah had inadvertently sparked was spreading beyond the research facilities. Decades of resentment against Council authority erupted into peaceful but determined resistance. Transport unions refused to move Council security forces. Communication workers blocked official channels while ensuring resistance frequencies remained open. Commander, Julia called out urgently. New data from Facility 7. They were working on something different there. Something bigger. Sarah reviewed the files and felt her blood run cold. Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Now. The facility had been developing a bioweapon specifically targeted at human genetic markers. A weapon designed to wipe out humanity while leaving other species unaffected. And according to the data, it was nearly ready for deployment. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Julia announced. Sarah took a deep breath. The revolution had grown beyond her control, becoming something larger and more powerful than she'd imagined. But now she faced a direct threat to her species' survival. This is Commander Chen, she said as the channel opened. Request immediate authorization for Operation Sunburst. The response was immediate. Authorization granted, Commander, whatever it takes. Sarah turned to Vextra. I need your fastest ship and your best pilots. We have a facility to destroy. The Arcturian's crystalline surface rippled with deadly purpose. You shall have them. And more. The Council's crimes end today. As preparations began for the assault on Facility 7, Sarah watched the revolution continue to unfold across Council space. She had come to rescue 5 diplomats and had instead sparked an uprising that would reshape galactic society. But first, she had a species to save. Facility 7 hung in the void like a malignant tumor, its dark surface absorbing nearby starlight. The Arcturian stealth ship, Shadow Dancer, approached under complete emission control, carrying Sarah and a joint human-Arcturian strike team. Defense grid analysis complete, Julia reported from her station. 3 layers of automated systems, plus a garrison of elite council troops. They know what they're protecting. Sarah reviewed the tactical data through her neural interface. The facility's defenses were formidable, but they were designed to repel conventional military attacks. No one had expected a precision strike using Council Race's own advanced technology. New data from our inside contacts, Julia continued. The bioweapon is in final testing. They're accelerating the timeline, planning deployment within 48 hours. Target locations. Every human settlement in Council space. Once they confirm it works, they'll expand to Earth itself. Sarah's jaw tightened. Not happening. Begin Phase 1. Across Council space, the revolution they'd sparked provided perfect cover for their real mission. As riots and protests erupted on dozens of worlds, Council security forces were stretched thin, unable to respond effectively to yet another crisis. The Shadow Dancer's stealth systems, combined with Sarah's neural interface, allowed them to exploit gaps in the facility's sensor coverage. They slipped through the first layer of defenses without detection, using the facility's own blind spots against it. Multiple ships approaching, Julia warned. Council heavy cruisers. They're responding to the facility's general alert status. Time to make some noise, Sarah commanded. Execute Protocol Omega. Across the sector, automated distress beacons activated, broadcasting false signals suggesting simultaneous attacks on multiple Council facilities. The approaching cruisers divided their forces, spreading thin to respond to phantom threats. The Shadow Dancer reached the facility's docking ring, just as the second phase of their plan began. Throughout Council space, resistance cells launched coordinated cyber attacks on military communication networks. The resulting chaos bought them precious minutes. Docking complete. Security systems compromised. Sarah led the strike team into the facility, their advanced stealth suits rendering them nearly invisible. The few guards they encountered fell to silent neural disruptors before they could raise alarms. The bioweapon lab is 3 levels down. Julia guided them through their neural links. Heavy security. And Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures. Something's not right. They encountered the first real resistance at a security checkpoint. Council elite guards, equipped with sensor systems that could detect their stealth technology. The firefight was brief but intense, Sarah's neural enhancements allowing her to coordinate the team with machine precision. Commander, one of the Arcturian warriors called out, examining a fallen guard's equipment. These troops, they're using prototype weapons, technology that shouldn't exist yet. Sarah's suspicions grew. The facility wasn't just a weapons lab, it was something far more dangerous. They fought their way down to the lab level, but the scene that greeted them stopped them cold. The massive chamber was filled with temporal manipulation equipment, technology banned by every civilized species. They're not just developing a bioweapon, Sarah realized, horror dawning. They're trying to send it back in time. Target humanity before we develop spaceflight. Impossible, Julia protested through the neural link. The energy requirements alone. Unless they've solved the containment problem. Sarah's mind raced. The genetics research, the weapons development. It was all leading to this. They want to erase us from history. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a figure Sarah recognized from Council intelligence briefings. High Administrator Vexnor, architect of the anti-human faction's most aggressive policies. Clever humans, the administrator's translator rendered their speech in coldly precise tones. Always so resourceful, so adaptable. That's why you're such a threat. Sarah raised her weapon, but Vexnor merely smiled. Too late, Commander. The device is already powering up. In moments, we'll correct the greatest mistake in Council history, allowing humanity to reach the stars. The chamber hummed with growing energy as the temporal equipment activated. Warning lights flashed as containment fields struggled to control the mounting power. You don't understand what you're doing, Sarah warned. Temporal manipulation on this scale. You'll tear reality apart. A small price to pay to ensure Council dominance. Sarah's neural implants screamed warnings as the temporal field began to stabilize. They were out of time. She made her decision. Julia, execute Protocol Omega Prime. Authorization, Chen Alpha 7. Commander, that will do it. Across Council space, sleeper programs embedded in their earlier cyber attacks activated. Not targeting military systems this time, but the fundamental infrastructure of Council power. Power grids, atmospheric processors, gravity controllers. Everything began to fail simultaneously. The facility's temporal equipment, dependent on precise power regulation, started to overload. Vexnor's smug expression turned to horror as alarms blared. What have you done? Showed you why humanity is dangerous, Sarah answered, ordering her team to fall back. We don't just adapt. We make sure our enemies regret forcing us to. The facility began to tear itself apart as the temporal energies ran wild. Sarah's team fought their way back to the Shadow Dancer, pursued by increasingly desperate Council forces. As they broke free of the facility's docking ring, Sarah watched through the ship's sensors as years of Council arrogance and cruelty culminated in a devastating lesson about underestimating humanity. Facility 7 imploded, the temporal energies collapsing in on themselves. The resulting shockwave rippled through space-time itself, a visible reminder that some lines should never be crossed. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. The Council's plans had been thwarted, but the revolution they'd sparked was about to enter its final, most dangerous phase. The emergency session of the Galactic Council stretched into its third day. Holographic displays showed scenes of upheaval across Council space, centuries of carefully maintained power structures crumbling in the face of undeniable truth. Sarah watched from the observation gallery as Ambassador Richards presented the final evidence. The attempted temporal genocide at Facility 7 had shattered any remaining pretense of Council legitimacy. The old order is finished, Vextre observed, their crystalline form reflecting the chamber's tense atmosphere. The question is, what replaces it? The answer came not from the Council chamber, but from 100 worlds simultaneously. The revolution had evolved beyond its original scope, transforming into something unprecedented in galactic history. We're receiving transmissions from every major system, Julia reported through their neural link. The resistance cells are organizing. Not just protests anymore, they're forming provisional governments. The Council's attempts to maintain control had backfired spectacularly. Each revelation of corruption and cruelty had fueled the growing movement for change. Now, species that had been marginalized for centuries were claiming their right to self-determination. Incoming priority message from Earth Command, Julia announced. The defense fleet is mobilizing, not for war, but to protect newly liberated worlds from Council hardliners. Sarah accessed the tactical data through her neural interface. Across the sector, Council military units were making their choices. Many had already sided with the revolution, refusing orders to suppress the uprising. Others stood down, unwilling to fire on their own people. In the Council chamber below, the power shift was becoming physical. Representatives of non-Council worlds, previously relegated to observer status, were taking their places at the main table. Their demands were simple: immediate recognition of independence, reparations for centuries of exploitation, and trials for those responsible for crimes against sentient beings. "Commander," Julia's voice carried a note of awe. "You need to see this." New data streamed through Sarah's neural link. The revolution had uncovered something unexpected. Evidence that the Council's rise to power had been built on stolen technology, suppressed histories, and carefully manipulated conflicts designed to keep potential rival species divided. "Release everything," Sarah commanded. "Every file, every record. Let the truth be their legacy." The next hours were a blur of diplomatic activity. Earth's representatives, backed by the Arcturians and other allied species, proposed a new framework for galactic cooperation. Not a council that ruled through force and fear, but a federation based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. "The vote is complete," Julia reported as the chamber erupted in cheers. "The Galactic Federation Charter has been ratified. The Council era is officially over." Sarah watched as former Council enforcers were led away in restraints, facing justice for their crimes. Among them was High Administrator Vexnor, their earlier arrogance replaced by the hollow look of someone who had underestimated their opponent for the last time. "Earth Command is requesting your presence," Julia interrupted her thoughts. "They're creating a new division, Interstellar Security and Cooperation. They want you to lead it." Sarah considered the offer. The revolution had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but maintaining the peace would be an even greater challenge. The Federation would need people who understood both the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of unity in the face of common threats. "Accept the position," she decided. "But with conditions. I want a joint human-alien command structure. No species holds too much power ever again." The aftermath of the revolution brought rapid changes. The Federation's first acts included releasing all political prisoners, establishing truth commissions to document Council crimes, and beginning the massive task of redistributing stolen resources to their rightful owners. More importantly, the barriers that had kept humanity isolated were torn down. Earth's advanced adaptability, once feared and suppressed by the Council, became a valued asset in solving previously intractable problems. Human innovation, combined with alien wisdom and technology, sparked a renaissance of cultural and scientific advancement. Sarah stood at a viewport on the newly commissioned Federation flagship, watching ships from 100 worlds moving in harmony through the spatial lanes. Among them was a group of human vessels, no longer restricted to Council-approved routes. Quite a view. Ambassador Richards joined her. Hard to believe it all started with a rescue mission. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest beginnings. We just needed the right catalyst. And the right person to light the fuse, he added meaningfully. Alerts flashed through Sarah's neural interface. Reports of former Council loyalists gathering in the outer systems, whispers of hidden weapons caches, hints of old threats seeking new opportunities. The galaxy was still a dangerous place. But now, humanity faced those dangers not alone, but as part of something greater. The revolution had not just freed Earth from Council control, it had forged bonds between species that had never known true alliance before. "Your new team is assembled," Julia reported. "Representatives from 20 species, all veterans of the revolution. They're waiting for your orders." Sarah turned from the viewport, purpose filling her stride. The war for freedom was over. The work of building a better galaxy was just beginning, and humanity would help lead the way.